I have a strong opinion about published adventures. If you are a GM who runs a published adventure and it doesn't go well, and you blame the adventure for it, you're blaming the wrong person. I believe that we GMs are responsible for all of the material we bring to our table. And if we buy and pick up and read a published adventure and we get ready to run it and we don't like it, it's our responsibility to turn it into something that we do like. That's my belief. We are ultimately responsible for the stuff we bring to the table. And the good news is, with great responsibility comes great power. And that power is we are free to change anything we want to make that happen. We are under no obligation to run an adventure as written. You could argue that, well, maybe in organized play circumstances, or if you're going to conventions and people signed up for an adventure, that you owe them a good adventure. I bet you that you would still be better off, especially with some of the more egregious issues, changing those issues, changing the adventure to make it more fun, or don't do it, right? Like your alternative take is find something else to do with your time and run adventures that you know are actually going to be fun. However, sometimes you buy a published adventure, you're very excited about it, you want to run it, and you read it, and they're like, well, there's components of this I like, but there's a lot of stuff I don't. How do you know what to change in the adventure? How do you go about the process of changing the adventure? Today, we're going to look at an adventure that I've started running this past week. It is a Dragonbane adventure, and I'm going to talk about some of the issues that I had with it, and I'm going to talk about sort of the approach that I took to kind of turn it into an adventure that I was a lot happier running. And I started running half of it. We haven't finished it yet. We're now on a holiday break. So it's going to be about 3 weeks before I finish it again. But I've already got ideas about where we want to go. I did see some problems, even after I had changed it, some problems that occurred. Those problems are mine. Because at this point, I am responsible, right? I'm responsible anyway, but I was responsible for the issues. Even though I was like, oh yeah, that didn't really happen. So the adventure that we're going to look at today is Road's End Inn. This is one of the adventures that's included in the large Dragon Emperor campaign setting, which is included in the Dragonbane box set. The Dragonbane box set was my favorite RPG product of the last year. It's an outstanding product. Like I said, it's like the Mary Poppins carpet bag of RPG products, where you buy it. I think it's like $60. It's like $58, $60. You open it up, it's just like stuff is like pouring out of it. Multiple books. The whole rule book for the whole game is in there. There's like monster tokens and character standees, and there's dice, and there's a whole solo RPG, and there's a map, and there's a battle map, and it's just like stuff just keeps flying out of this box. It's really great. So my home group just switched over from a 20th level 5th edition game, which was huge and high power, to Dragonbane. We had our session 0 a couple of weeks ago. We've had our second full session of Dragonbane this past week. And at this point, we now have some ideas about the stuff we like about Dragonbane, some stuff we don't like about Dragonbane, and we're starting to go into the actual adventures. So when I ran the adventures, I pulled adventures randomly. And one of the adventures that they pulled, and the characters looked at the map and said, that is pretty close to, that's the closest one to where we are. Why don't we go there first? And that one was Road's End Inn. So the scenario for Road's End Inn is that there's this kind of dilapidated inn that's right on the edge of the wild marshes out east from the city of Outskirt, where the kind of central area, and it's haunted. Right? It's haunted and it's cursed. And the story, this is big spoilers, by the way. If you want spoilers for this adventure, this is full of spoilers. So be aware of the spoilers. A woman named Stare was accused of having kidnapped a child, and she was thrown in the basement and died down there. And when she died, she ended up cursing the inn and its inhabitants. And that's kind of the situation, right? Is the characters, when the characters arrive at the inn, they can slowly learn that this place is cursed. Now, right away, there's like a few problems with it. And reading through it. So here's the good news. The good news, first of all, the scene is kind of neat, right? The scenario is kind of neat. The idea that there's like a woman who was accused of kidnapping a child, but didn't actually do it, but died, and now she has cursed it. We've got kind of a fun situation going on there. The problem is that the adventure misses some very key components to it that kind of make the whole thing not make a lot of sense. And we're going to talk about those. And it's no longer their responsibility to have done it. Would it be better if this was a better adventure? Sure. But I'm not critiquing the adventure at this point. I mean, you will hear me critique it. But my point is, it's now up to us, we got to fix it. I had to fix this. If I'm giving this, my friends are driving over, right? They're taking time away from anything else they could be doing in the world. And they're coming over here to play a game. I want to make sure that the game that they're running is going to be fun. So I changed it. And the good news was, even though we had talk about some things with Dragonbane that we liked and didn't like, they were on board with the adventure. They thought the adventure was fun. But there was a couple of tricky bits that I ran into. So the good news is the adventure is not particularly long, right? It's like 5-6 pages long. It's a pretty short piece, which means it's pretty easy to digest this adventure when you're getting ready to run it. That's something that I liked. The good news was that meant I was able to identify the problems with this adventure very quickly. And the shorter the adventure, the easier it is to do that, right? When I can go and I go back, wait, I don't understand. Why does this work this way? So here's some of the issues that I have with this adventure that showed up right away. One is there's immediately sort of a Deus Ex Machina where while they're in the inn, suddenly they all fall asleep and then they all wake up in a bunch of beds. And that just feels kind of wrong. The idea that like they make no choice except showing up and then they're pulled in is kind of a problem. I got rid of that and I said instead they are going to learn about the cellar and they're going to make their way down there on their own. But that's trouble because what if they don't? What if they decide they don't want to go down in the cellar? Now, luckily they did. But for example, they already knew the inn was in a shady situation when they went in. And 5 of the 6 players went in and the 6th said, I'm not going in. But then I came up with an improv on the spot idea that there's actually an alternative way to get them to the basement that's outside through a storm cellar and that the character kind of got swept into the storm cellar. But there was still this sort of like one-way door. I had to pull them into the place and make it so they couldn't just come and go at will, right? Which kind of makes sense from a curse standpoint. Like they are trapping people here. So I don't think it was out of hand. It's a little railroady though. Even my approach of like, hey, once you find the cellar door and you go down into the cellar door and you're down below, you can't get back up again. Now, an interesting thing there, when I added that sort of cellar door situation, was one of the characters tried to cast Dispel Magic on it and got a dragon. They critically succeeded. So I was like, they even managed to shred part of the curse and made it so they could get back up, at least for a short period of time. And that kept the door open for a bit until they made their way down and then it closed again. So they were able to sort of like use a Dispel Magic to sort of start to break the curse. That was something that I kind of added at the moment. But let me talk about some of the other problems. So one is you have this kind of one-way door, sort of Deus Ex Machina. You're just swept in, right? It's sort of railroady, like you show up at the end and you're pulled in. But a couple other big problems. What exactly is the curse? It doesn't seem like anybody's really in a terrible spot. They're all a little depressed. They're all kind of trapped here. People kind of get stuck here. But there's nothing about like how long they've been stuck here. It all seems like everything is very recent, and it doesn't seem like any actual hauntings are taking place. People kind of show up in different spots, but like the couple the couple and the innkeeper who are ultimately responsible for this, they're just doing their normal daily stuff. So I'm not sure what their curse is exactly. It's not very clear what the curse actually does. So that's one problem. 2 is it's not really clear how the curse is supposed to end. There's a couple of things that they talk about where like you can fight. The woman who's kind of now a hag, she's sort of this, kind of like a banshee, kind of like a hag. She's stuck in this room. She's on a chain, but the chain doesn't actually inhibit her ability to attack the characters. And the door, again, is like a one-way door. So once they're in, they're stuck in there. And they have a thing like you could kill her and that ends the curse. Also, if you you break her free, she runs, but where does she run to? That's not really described. Like the curse doesn't have a cycle to it. There's no flow to the thing. And then later it kind of describes, there's a situation of like, during combat, we'll get to one other piece, which is the weird doll, right? So let me get to the doll part. There's one part where the characters learn that there is, they see this portrait, they see that here's the actual girl who's missing, right? I guess in this case it's a boy. I changed it to a girl because I had a reason. I'm going to tell you the changes that I made. But they have like a small boy, toddler or small boys. So that's like clearly, okay, that's the kid who's missing. Well, where the hell did he go? What happened to him? As far as I can tell, there's nothing in here that I could find about what actually ultimately happened to the kid. Also, there's now this doll, right? The cradle lies a porcelain doll that looks a lot like the child in the painting. Okay, so there's a doll. Is the doll the child? Obviously, kind of, but is it the cursed child? Well, how did the child get down here? Where's the kid? And what's the doll? Or a couple of questions. And then later on, when you're fighting her, she seems very eager, right? To get the doll. She says things like, get the doll. Hey, here it is. If Stare is freed, if the player characters break the chain, Stare snatches the doll by force if necessary. Again, what do you think your players are going to be happy when she comes up and tries to snatch the doll? No, they're going to stop her. Well, what does that do? right? Force is necessary and disappears through the blackened portal. This is the portal that you came through, the one-way door that you came through. The player characters cannot follow her. Light sources can then be lit in the room. So where does she go? Does that end the curse? Is it part of the curse? Does it make the curse worse? The fact that you can't do anything about it isn't great, but it's never really clear what happens. Here it is. If Stare is killed, the curse is lifted, but the player characters must still find their way out of the illusion through the graveyard. So this says the curse is lifted here, right? But then later on, it talks about it, and it says like when they cross over a certain amount, well, then the curse is lifted again, right? If the curse is lifted from the inn, all guests are now free to leave. So I guess they're trapped there, right? It's really not, it really, no, open graves, 3 of which are open, right? It doesn't make sense what exactly is happening here. Okay, so that's the issue, right? Those are some of the issues. Also, it's got another thing which says witch hounds. The witch hounds are like dogs. The idea is that the dogs also died with her. That's not going to work for my group. We don't have any kind of like harm to domesticated animals is a hard line for our group. So I'm like, they're spectral wolves that she summoned. Right? There's like hellhounds kind of things. They're spectral witch. I still like the idea of witch hounds. The idea though is the witch hounds are sort of spectral beasts, not actual beasts, and they don't represent the animals that died in it, because I don't want to have any animals that die in my games. That's kind of a personal issue, but that's an example of the kind of thing where you want to change your adventure to fit what you want to bring to the game. So what are some of the things I changed, and how did I change it? This is where we get into like what are some of the things you can do to modify an adventure? Well, the first thing to do is to kind of ask yourself, what's the actual story and situation that's going on here, right? What's the situation, and how would that situation play out with or without the characters? So you remove the characters from the situation, and what exactly is going on with the curse? And here are the few things that I changed. One is, I like the idea that people are trapped at the inn, but they're trapped there forever. So some of these people have been there for 20 years. So the argument that I had was the family that's there who lost their child and the innkeeper have been trapped in this inn for 20 years, which means when you arrive at the inn, it's an old dilapidated inn from the outside. It hasn't been touched in a long time. Every so often people make their way there, and when they get there, they are likewise trapped and are going to be trapped there for a long time. And the curse has been going on for 20 years. They are also kind of trapped in their moments of misery. Not always, but sometimes they're trapped in their moment of misery. So the parents that are there who are in the inn are trapped at the moment where they really feel like they lost their child, right? That they went out looking for their child. They did not find her. In this case, I'd switch to a woman. I'll tell you why the child was a girl. Has an important kind of standpoint in the way that I changed the adventure. And they're distraught, and they're stuck in that feeling of being distraught for 20 years. They don't even know that it's been 20 years. But they know they've been stuck in this, element of distraught. There's definitely like this element of Groundhog Day sort of situation where different people are sort of stuck in repeating cycles. So this, there's this group that's playing like the flute and the violin, and they're playing the same tune over and over again. In fact, the soundtrack for Dragonbane has a tavern music thing, and you can put it on repeat and basically say like that repetitious cycle, that's what you're hearing. And so the bard character learned that like these musicians are trapped continually playing the same licks of music over and over again. Is that their worst spot? Maybe not, but they're kind of trapped in that loop. They went into the back room, and one of the cooks accidentally set fire to the inn and panicked when a grease fire kind of hit the wall and started setting fire to the inn. And then like it would cycle through, and then it'd be fine and it's not on fire, and then he'd do it again. So that kind of moment of panic, he was stuck in that moment of panic for 20 years, right? However, yeah, probably he was there as long as the inn was there. So that's something I changed. That's the curse, right? The curse is that the woman said everybody is trapped here, and they're trapped in their moment of misery. That's what I want to push. Right? So that was one major change I made. Another major change I made is I wanted to get rid of the Deus Ex Machina. They all wake up in beds, because that just sucks. Even though it's like, well, all their stuff is in, it doesn't make any sense. Like, why? Why are they in the beds? Why did they get transported? So instead I had that sort of this whole cursed place is sort of a one-way gate. You're sort of traveling through the woman's nightmares and memories and locations, and the memories and locations of other people. And you kind of, when you go into a room, you can't get back to the previous room. They're like one-way doors. That I felt was okay. What I didn't think was okay is this idea that like all of you suddenly fall asleep and then wake up. Like, why? What does she care about you? Why are you part of the curse? Well, the idea that like you could be stuck here forever, that kind of makes sense. But the idea that they're kind of being pulled around didn't. So that was another major change. Then probably the biggest change was I switched out. So the big question, where's the kid, right? The kid disappeared. Where are they now? What does the woman know? What does the trapped woman know? They call her like a hag, but she's not a hag, right? She's a normal woman, right? She's like a witch that like lived off in the woods and did stuff. So what happened with the kid? Well, I had an idea, and my idea was, what if we already know who the kid is? And the answer was, if you go all the way back to the intro city, the intro town outskirt, there's a character here. So there's a character here, Ophelia Shadowleaf, right? And she's a keeper of the Immaculate Flame. So she is one of the followers of the dragons and of the elves, and she kind of knows things. And I was like, what if it's her? Right? So she's like, let's say she's in her mid-20s, and let's say when she was 5, she disappeared from the inn. And then I was like, then I'm following this through, and I was like, what if what happened was she went actually to the woman's house to go buy a balm or a whatever, herbs from the woman for her mother, then disappeared afterwards. And they assumed that the woman had taken her. Right? They assumed that the woman, because they were like, yeah, we never really liked her. She always lived on her own in the marsh, and we called her a witch, and she always sold stuff. I bet she has her. When the reality is Ophelia disappeared. Well, what happened when she disappeared? So my idea was, what if she fell down like a deep hole and she broke her hip? As a small child, she fell down the hole and broke her hip. And an elf from another realm, sort of an elf kind of tied to the dragons, who would you have these sort of like fayish woods, found her and brought her from the well, but didn't know who she was, and brought her into whatever fey realm they were at, and they healed her, but they couldn't heal her fully. And so the idea that I had was, now I'm bringing stuff more into the future, and I did this at the beginning of the session. They saw Ophelia, and they saw Ophelia dealing with this other kind of strange fellow, Draneth. And Draneth is like an old wizard in the area. And my idea was, what if she's buying like a balm from him? So the characters kind of see them in the street, and he's handing her a balm. She's handing him money, and he doesn't take the money, but she keeps saying, like, you got to take the money, got to take the money. And when they see her, she's limping, right? She's got kind of a limp in her gait. And when they did some healing checks and stuff like that, they say, oh, she's not wounded. It's an injury. It's like a long injury, right? She has an impairment, right? She's had something clearly, like, she doesn't even really think about it very much, but it clearly hurts her. Probably hurts at different times. Like sometimes she's fine and sometimes she's not. And when she's not, she goes to jail and gets a bomb. I was like, that's kind of a nice, fun, realistic thing for her, right? She's got a hip issue, right? And it also means, like, why isn't she out there doing all this adventuring? She really can't. She's wearing armor. She's a knight, but she knows she can't just go off delving into the deepest dungeons because she has this impairment. And so she, but the idea was that she is buying this balm from this guy at the time, and the characters see that first, and then they go to the inn. Let's go back to the inn. So they go back to the inn, and then throughout the course of the adventure, they learn that there was this girl, right? And she disappeared when she was 5. She was picked up by this hag, and who knows what the hag did, ate her or whatever. But in truth, she just fell down the well and was rescued. And the hag knows it because instead of the doll, and this is where I replaced a key component, instead of the doll, they instead found a bowl. It was like a magic bowl that the woman, whose name is Stair, that Stair had this bowl, and the bowl was kind of a scrying bowl. And if you filled the scrying bowl with this particular kind of nice water, because one of the chambers, chamber 7, has this like underground pond, and we'll say that the pond is creating this beautiful kind of, the water is special, right? It's got fayish kind of stuff going on there. And they fill the bowl with water up. And when they look into it, they can see it. And they see the situation of the young girl running through the woods, falling in this hole, breaking her hip. And then the elf come and taking her out. This glowing, kind of green glowing creature kind of lifts her up and takes her and kind of disappears into the woods with her. And I kind of exposed that close to the end of the session. And 2 of the players went, holy cow, that's Ophelia. And they're like, what? Like, that's her. That's the woman from the town, right? And she goes, and the woman goes, yeah, because it was 20 years ago, right? The timing works. She's about 25 and the girl was 5. The timing works, right? And they're like, wow. So they figured it out. 2 of them, they kind of figured out the clues. Like, oh, that's her. That was a fun exposure. Now we know what happened to the child, right? That works. And also it kind of starts to give us an idea about the curse itself and how the curse can be broken. So this is a part that I haven't gotten to yet. So one of the things that, but that you can see, and again, I don't want to just fixate on like how to fix this adventure. I hope what you're getting from this is how to think about adventures you're running, which is what connects the dots, what makes sense for the situation, what's the flow of the story, like what's the circle of the story, regardless of the characters. The characters will get involved and they'll learn this stuff. But what's the secrets? What are the things that they're going to pick up that are going to show them what's going on? How do you say like, oh, they've met this character, I'm going to tie this character over here to this situation over here, and now I have a clean loop, right? I have a clean connection. Other than whatever happened to the kid, no one knows, right? Which might be more realistic, but it's not any more fun, I'll tell you that. And then you can change other components like, oh, I can keep the rest of this, but instead of the doll, I'm going to have it be a bowl. Right. And the bowl is going to be the bowl that the woman Stair had, and that lets her scry on stuff. And she knew what really happened, but she, nobody believed her. Right. Nobody could say anything. So they threw in the cell and forgot about her. So that's an example of like how to change that component of it. So then the curse itself, then we think about like, well, what could break the curse at that point? And I think now we have something more interesting than they either kill her or not. 'Cause like, you're also like, she was falsely accused and she's been trapped here as a ghost and she's cursed the inn. And the solution isn't giving her justice. The solution is killing her. Well, like, she's already dead for one, but that's not solving the curse, right? Solving the curse is making it happen. And so the idea is, well, if the characters can bring the bowl with the water and kind of make their way, again, a kind of a loop. They go past her through the graveyard. They make their way back to the inn again, only now they have the bowl. And they show the bowl to the couple. The couple will realize what happened to their daughter, and they'll realize what they had done. They will be both filled with remorse and shame for what they have done to this woman, and also relief and forgiveness and recognition that, oh my God, we've been trapped here 20 years. That's the curse that we've faced, is we lost our whole life with our daughter, and our daughter's alive. And she's okay. Also, Ophelia has no memories of her previous family. She probably has little hazy memories, but 20 years of her life, or some number of years of her life, were spent like with elves learning about the dragon, the dragon emperor and stuff like that. So, she's got a whole different life now. She doesn't even know that, like, hey, two days away is an inn where your family lived. She never bothered to figure it out because she had no real recollection of it. So that loop kind of fits. So now the idea of like, there is now a way to solve, there are now multiple ways to kind of solve the curse. They could also defeat the hag, right, and break her down. And you can throw all kinds of hints out there. And this is where we'd say, like, we want to have multiple possible solutions, that rather than just the only way to solve the situation is bring the bowl to the couple. Well, that is one way. There could be other things that they come up with. There could be other ways. We know that the main goal of the quote unquote villain in this, of Stair, is she wants the people to know what happened. She wants them to admit that they were wrong, that they basically murdered her. And the cost for that was losing 20 years of their life with their daughter, right? That it turned out that their daughter's fine. They lost their daughter anyway, but it turns out their daughter's okay. That's kind of the key to breaking the curse. So that's like another area to change it. I am going to bring up, and this is like a little separate thing that you get. Like, look at her, poor, that poor woman. So another little thing, my players, so after we ran our game, we talked about Dragonbane and stuff like that. And I really love it. Like, I really love Dragonbane, but I knew it's a different kind of RPG than 5e is. And I was worried that like my players wouldn't like it as much. But really the answer is there's only one part of it so far. I mean, there's probably little quibbles here and there, but there's only one part of it that the players, two players directly said, yeah, I don't like it. Like, it's making me not like the game. And it's the idea that you have to burn your action to evade, right? That if you want to defend yourself against an attack, you have to essentially either have an initiative that's later on in the turn order, or move your initiative later in the turn order. And then if you're going to evade, you have to use your turn to do the evasion. And they feel like that's punitive. Right. And I understand, you don't have to email me about it. I get it that like the difference is that the action economy in Dragonbane is very different, and evading is as powerful an action as an attack is. But when you're used to 5e, where your turn and your action had so much stuff you could do, that the idea that you would burn your whole turn's worth of stuff to just defend, isn't great. Even though Dragonbane, you have very fewer things that you do in a turn, which means the turns are super fast. It still feels like too much. And I talked to a friend of mine who had played a Dragonbane campaign with somebody else, and he said, yeah, our group never got over that. Like, it was one thing we really did. Like, we played it and we had fun, but we really didn't like that. Now, the interesting thing about Dragonbane is Dragonbane has 2 heroic options. So they're called heroic abilities, and one of them is called defensive. And this defensive is essentially that when you attempt to parry, you don't consume your action to do the parry. You can do it at any point during the turn. You don't consume your action to do so. It costs 3 willpower, so you're burning willpower to do it. You can only do it once a round, and you can't try to both parry and dodge. So it's a heroic ability that you get. The other one is called fast footwork. Fast footwork, you may attempt to dodge an attack without consuming your action for the round. The bonus dodge can be performed at any time during the round. You may only try to dodge the same attack once, and you cannot try to dodge and parry the same attack. The ability can be used multiple times per round as long as you have enough willpower, and it also costs 3 willpower. So the interesting thing is the game has mechanics in it. Of course, it's a heroic ability, so you have to earn it as part of a heroic ability. But it has ways to kind of get around this thing that my players didn't like. So my little thought was, what if I let them have one of those 2 automatically? Like, why not just let them have it? And my argument is, like, maybe you're increasing the power of the characters a little bit, but not any more than if they got an extra heroic boon. Because as soon as my players heard that these existed, all of them said, oh yeah, I'm definitely taking that one. And that to me is an example of like a trap choice, right? The trap choice is we're not going to even look at any of the other heroic abilities that are there, because those are the ones that are giving us more things we can do a turn, and more things is what we want, right? In this case, they feel like it's not even above and beyond what they can do. In this case, they feel like this is just getting them even. So now we get back to like how to modify adventures. This is a specific example for Dragonbane, but sometimes there's other things where you're like, I want to give characters some other stuff. What are some ways that I can modify adventures in order to do it? So then I had an idea. Okay, I could just start the session off next time and say, hey, guess what, everybody? I have decided that you can pick one of these 2 heroic boons. And that way you have this ability to kind of evade. You're burning your will to do so, but you have this option to evade when you're getting attacked. And but I was like, what if instead they earn it? What if they earn it during the adventure, right? So what if they have something else? And there's a section called the gallery, right? Section 8. It's right before you get into section 9. And I was like, instead of the gallery, what if it was like a gallery, but what if it was a gallery that was made up of like wooden soldiers that were like carved out of wood and given spears and stuff like that. And they were carved by the father, who is like I decided he's kind of a carpenter type, and he's kind of a sculptor, and he can sculpt wooden things. And the characters ended up fighting a bunch of these wooden soldiers. And the wooden soldiers are using all kinds of like martial abilities. They're learning about parrying and dodging, and they're doing stuff. And while the characters are fighting them, they're learning this stuff as they go. So when they defeat it, they suddenly find themselves like, you have now all picked up a heroic boon, either the evade or the defensive heroic boon, because you fought and defeated these particular knights. So now there's a reason for it, right? Now there's a purpose for this battle that there's an in-world reason why they got this new ability. And I think the players would definitely like that better than just getting it alone. The idea that they earned it by fighting in this particular battle and saw this battle, and they can remember, yeah, we all got that evade because we fought those wooden soldiers that the guy had made. They were the cursed wooden soldiers. I thought that was a neat, kind of elegant way to slide in this house rule. And the house rule is what I consider to be pretty benign, because it's essentially saying we're going to give him one extra heroic boon. Right, like not even that. It's even more limited, because I'm saying you're getting an extra heroic boon, but it has to be one of these 2. The answer is those 2 are probably the most 2 powerful heroic boons in the game, because they increase your ability to act on your turn. So that is kind of another way to modify an adventure. So what I kind of want to leave you with here is, I want you to accept and recognize your own responsibility for tweaking adventures to make them the most fun for the group. If you run an adventure for your table and it didn't pan out, ask yourself who's really to blame at this. I'm not going to put too much on you. We have a hard, GMing is tough, so don't take it too harshly. My point is, if you knew there were problems with the adventure going in and you didn't do anything about them, now it's your problem, right? If you stumble into things, you're like, oh yeah, that ended up being a problem, I didn't realize it. Okay, we all make that mistake. However, like, you ultimately have responsibility for making an adventure work for your table. But also, with great responsibility comes great power. In this circumstance, anyway. Sometimes no. But in this circumstance, the great power is you can change anything you want. You can take whatever piece of it you want and you can turn that into the adventure you want. You can take just the prompt. Or you could say, like, I really like the map and I really like some of the encounters, but I'm going to change these other encounters. Or I'm going to change some of the NPCs so they're connected to NPCs that the characters care about. Or I don't understand what the hell's going on with this doll. I don't want to know why the curse works. I don't really understand what any kind of torment that anybody has, so I'm going to change all those things. You can do so. And yeah, I did so. And it wasn't the end of the world. It didn't take forever. And the adventure was still really fun. So it can still work out. But the way to change the adventure is kind of ask yourself, what's the situation in the world? What's really going on in the world? Does this work? Does this situation work? Does it make sense? Like, where are the threads going? What happens? And then change them, right? If you like the adventure is not covering them, you get to go in and you get to change them. What are the things that you can change? So start with that situation. Make sure you're not just putting a single path to follow through. This isn't the, it's a small world ride, right? You want the players to have agency in what they do. And to me, the way to get that agency is really think about what the situation is and what makes sense in the world itself, putting that situation in front of the characters and letting them navigate it.